Now, political analyst Botsang Moiloa joins us on the phone line. Thank you very much for your time. Is it correct for a rating agency to make statements about cabinet reshuffles, which is clearly the prerogative of the government?
Well, good evening and good evening to your listeners. I am glad that you had an African National Congress minister there commenting about this matter. It can never be correct that a foreign-based, funded and influenced rating agency makes a determination to who should be in the cabinet of a sovereign state. That on its own is wrong. However, Minister Mokonyane there mentioned something very important. She says she hopes that none of the executive, which means the cabinet, of the African National Congress or of South Africa today is captured by these rating agencies, because then it will mean their interests are conflicted and therefore they will not serve in their position for the best interest of the country. It cannot be right, ma'am, that we have a foreign rating agency that is actually American and British origin, American and British funded, American and British based to determine who should be in the executive authority of a democratic state like South Africa, when actually our ministers are put in those positions by a democratically elected government. That is imperialism. They're trying to impose what has happened during the apartheid era, what has happened during the neocolonial and segregation era, whereby the World Bank, as well as the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, they are determining who should be government in the country. And we should not accept that as a country. What I wish for, as a South African, is that President Zuma should be listened to, because he has raised these issues before. Minister Mokonyane is right. President Zuma has raised these issues before, that we are having rating agencies that are having the interest of the imperialist countries and not the interest of the country at heart. We are the members of BRICS now as a nation. And while I technically agree with the minister that we should not be focusing on rating agencies for the BRICS countries, but for the development states, I would say let us start somewhere. China has rejected long years back these rating agencies. Russia recently has rejected these rating agencies. BRICS is left with South Africa, India, and Brazil, which is the former IPSA, a group, to reject these rating agencies. Unfortunately for Brazil, they allowed it to happen until a democratically elected leader in Brazil was removed due to the influence of these rating agencies. And it's coming our way as South Africans. It's very clear that these rating agencies, they want to dictate political decisions for us. They want to tell who should be in the executive. They want to take over political power when they already have economic influence. And that is my view.
And then what is the locus standi for S&P to make such a statement? And is there any precedent of an external rating agency making such a comment?
Well, there is no precedent, but we all know that it has been happening behind the scenes. If you look at South Africa historically, the likes of Nicky Oppenheimer during the Nelson Mandela era, they were making a call on which cabinet ministers should be appointed. They were making a call on who, not as rating agencies, but as politically influencing people and as well as, imperialist representatives and agents in South Africa. They've been doing that. During the Thabo Mbeki era, the situation was a little bit different because he tended to have focused on the African Union as well as the development in the SADC region. That's why when President Mbeki was removed from power, these rating agencies, they were comfortable about that. They did not, because he was an obstacle to some extent on their decisions. But what they have done now, they've done it in other countries, is the first time they are doing it on an official statement to South Africa. And what is worrying me is the African National Congress, which is the leading party in South Africa, the governing party in South Africa, their MPs, their branches, their members are silent about this whole process of a rating agency making a determination of who should be in the executive of the country. That is very worrying.
And now, a lot has also been said about how monopoly capital is still trying to control the economic reins of the country. In that light, how do you see the statement said by SNP?
Well, I don't think they are trying to control the economy of the country. They are already in control of the economy of the country. If you recall, a year or two ago, President Zuma appointed Des Van Rooyen to be the Minister of Finance, with qualifications as well as a background to can lead a finance portfolio. But because of the pressure from the white capital as well as these rating agencies, the appointment of Des Van Rooyen into that portfolio, it lasted only 4 days. So that's a clear sign that they are in control of the situation. But the ANC, as the leading party in the country at this moment, they will have to take an executive decision. They will have to come very firm to demonstrate that they are in power, they are in a political control, and therefore the decision to appoint the executive should not be influenced by foreign agencies or rating agencies. It should not be like that. But at the moment, we all know that they've been in control. The Ruperts of this world, the Oppenheimers, the Robin sitting in London, and all these agencies that are linked to the World Bank and the IMF, which South Africa is indebted to. There's one other element that we should not forget, that South Africa is indebted. We're indebted to the IMF. Some of these debts arise from the apartheid era. Some of these debts are because we wanted to look as a nation that we are a nation that pays its debt to international bodies and loaners and funders like the IMF. Now, in order to get credibility to the IMF, you have to play by the tune of these rating agencies. We have to take a critical stand. Unfortunately, many people think a weak currency, if the rand gets weak when we reject these agencies, it is the downfall of the economy. But that's not true. That is not how the economy works. Russia has done it. I've used an example. Russia has done it to reject these imperialist-based rating agencies and use agencies that are within the interest of the country. And I do not know why are we still debating and discussing this when one of these rating agencies in the USA, the biggest imperialist, has been found wanting, has been found guilty of corruption and maladministration. Therefore, as a nation, we should be rejecting them.
And now just talking on that rating agency, which was Moody's, which was fined for false ratings. Do you believe that this further underlines the fact that the rating agencies should not be taken at face value?
Well, they should not be taken at face value. We should look deep at who are the owners of this rating, who is sitting in the executive of these rating agencies. They are the same executive people who are investors in various developing countries. That's number one. Number two, the executives of these rating agencies, they are sitting in the board of the International Monetary Fund. They are sitting in the board that influence the World Bank. So we cannot just sit and say these people are rating us due to the effect of how governments are conducting themselves, how governments are behaving. What they are doing actually is neocolonialism, is the new imperialism. They are saying to us as a nation, we must conduct ourselves in a manner that is prescribed by them, while we should ignore our economic, social, and political development neighbors as well as friends like the Southern African Development Corporation, the African Union, the BRICS. We cannot operate outside as a nation of the bodies and international organizations that we subscribe to. And the rating agencies, they're actually Moody's and Fletchers and all that. They're actually trying to say to us, we should ignore the relationship between South Africa and Russia, which cannot be correct. We should ignore the relationship between Brazil, India, and China and South Africa. And we cannot be found to be ignoring political as well as economic development relationships we have with this member states. If we look at Zimbabwe at the moment, look at how these rating agencies, they have crippled and destroyed the economy of Zimbabwe just because the president of Zimbabwe, a few years back, with the pressure from the citizens and the pressure groups in that country, decided to do what the nation wants. Now, if these rating agencies, they cared about the interest, and the political as well as economic development of citizens of developing countries, they wouldn't downgrade us in trying to up the lives of citizens of a country. But we are faced with a situation, and I am glad at least one minister in the ANC cabinet, Nombola Mokonyane, is mentioning that she hopes the whole executive, which is the ANC executive, is thinking along her lines. If that is not the case, then we are doomed as a nation.